invite our panel members on stage now. Inviting the panel moderator first, that is Mr. 𝗕𝗗𝗊𝗂𝗃, who is CIO for functions at Wipro. CISO for functions at Wipro. Please give him a huge round of applause. Inviting our panel members now, we have Mr. Ravindra Dhawan, who is Head of IT Infrastructure Platforms and Operations at Mahindra & Mahindra. Mr. Sanjib Mondal, Senior Solutions Engineer, India and South Asia at Acronis. Mr. Prashanth Panduranga, CTIO at Swiss Re. Kuldeep Goyal, Head of IT Infra Lead at 𝗕𝗗𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗁. Arunraja Karthick, who is Head of IT Infra Cloud and Security at DTDC Express. Mr. Abhilash Das, Global Practice Leader Cloud Technology at Pentagon Limited. And Mr. Balaji Raghunathan, who is Vice President Technology and Solutions Digital Experience at ITC Infotech.
So thanks everyone for staying back, appreciate. And considering this is the last session of this event, I think most of our topics are already covered. So this will be kind of a conclusion or a summary kind of a discussion wherein you will find everything is kind of overlap or repeating. So, but yes, as individual speakers have put in their focused perspectives, probably we can get a little different perspective when we interact with eminent leaders from different industries and sectors. So that might be a takeaway from this. So the topics that we are trying to cover, which as I said already is kind of dealt with in detail, would be how now that cloud is not a buzz anymore, right? It's something which was a buzz half a decade ago. Now most of the organizations are on cloud. So the strategy of how to adopt the cloud and what service to adopt the cloud, something on those lines, and the security aspect, how secure or how to ensure the security. Those are the few aspects or perspectives which we'll try to cover. So the context was already set by a couple of speakers who had discussed the strategy, the cloud strategy, and Prashanth himself spoke in length on the security perspective, right? So let me start with a follow-up question which is following up from there. Prashanth, I would like to ask you to share your thoughts on the strategy part. Is the cloud adoption or cloud strategy same for all vertical, or it differs from industry to industry? What are your thoughts on that front? Because we hear a lot of time that this industry should have a different strategy, that industry should have a different strategy.
Sure. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think from a general cloud point of view, I think most organizations tend to not keep their industry specific when they design the architecture, right? So I don't think there is a separate thing that insurance would do in comparison to, let's say, manufacturing. However, based on your application, based on your landscape, obviously there will be differences. There will be differences from a compliance standpoint, obviously, because GDPR versus HIPAA versus another thing. So certain aspects that you would do differently. There would be differences in terms of scale as well, right? So for example, as an insurance company, I might have, let's say, 150 users, 500 users, or let's say 100 users, 1,000 users, etc. I would never be Netflix. I would never be Google, right? I would not have the requirement of the scale that Netflixes and the Googles would need. Yeah? So I would design my architecture very differently, but not because I'm a insurance. It is just because it is the requirement of the business essentially. So that's one aspect around thing. You also asked me asked the question around migration strategy or adoption strategy, right? So most organizations, unless they're a startup, they are in some form of thing, assuming on premise. I would start off with a really varied mix of applications that I want to migrate to the cloud. right? So some of them tend to take the most simple ones to try and migrate, assuming that, yeah, if I do this well, I'm good. That usually hurts in the overall migration strategy, right? It's been quite successful in Wells Fargo, in 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏, etc., where I've implemented a diverse range of things. So take critical, high, medium, low complex applications and try to do that. So when you try to migrate a diverse set of applications, you're trying to hit most of the aspects of it, because some might need particular set of services, right, like storage services to other services, Lambda, yada yada. Right? However, the smaller, very low critical application might not need it. So one of my suggestions would be, when you go for a migration, pick a very diverse set of applications to try and migrate.
Thanks, Prashanth. So, it's clear that cloud is there, and as he said, the migration strategy will differ from industry to industry basis the business requirement. So let me invite Balaji to give his perspective, because he's from the delivery and he caters the service to a lot of customers. So Balaji, what's your view? Because I have heard that in the migration, success of migration, one of the major concerns heard or called out by customer is that the strategy, migration strategy was not of the quality or the detailing. So what's your view on those fronts?
Yeah, so when we look at cloud migration, we need to look at it in three different aspects. One is the infrastructure migration, second is the application migration, and third is the data migration. So again, each of them may get into a different kind of strategy, but typically what we do is we take one as a service as a base, and look at what is the potential workload, and then probably look at sizing, whether so basically you baseline what is your on-premise load, and then you have a lot of tools which actually tells you what should be your provisioning which you should do as part of your cloud, right? So essentially, so that's the first step. Then the second is from an application perspective. Most people don't even have an inventory of what are all their applications. So the first step is to actually create what we call as an application register, right? So you just know what are the characteristics of the different applications you have, and then look at the how many integration points it has, what is the kind of technology it's built on. Just capture what are the characteristics of that particular application. Then coming to the data part, right? Again, we need to look at whether it's an operational data store, whether you're planning to migrate your database or your data warehouse. So that's the baseline part. So what I have seen is most companies don't even do the planning, right? So failure to plan is planning to fail. So what they do is they just take like what Prashanth mentioned, the simplest of the applications, they just migrate the the happy path, and then everything goes well. But then when they try to scale, that's where they actually realize that they've not done the proper architecture, they've not designed it the right way. So I would say first is baseline, plan, have an inventory, then you look at what you want to migrate, and then actually prioritize. So there are a lot of tools which will actually tell you what strategy you should use. So basically there is this 5R strategy, right? Whether you want to retire it or retain it or replace it or rehost it, right? So essentially even here people take the easy way out. So what they do is they just rehost whatever was on your premise, just change the location to cloud. They announce that they are now cloud first and all that. But that's not going to help you leverage. I think that's again related to whatever second question what Prashanth had asked, right? They are not even leveraging what are the benefits of cloud. So unless you look at re-platforming, you're not going to get the benefits of cloud. So I think that is when people realize that they're not really succeeding when it comes to cloud migration. And the third part is also like they don't culturally, assimilate with what a cloud native workforce should look like. Then they actually look at it more from an OpEx perspective, just from a cost saving perspective. But you should look at it from an agility perspective and flexibility perspective. That's when you get the benefits of cloud. So whatever analytics you can do today, you can do more on cloud than what you can do on premise. So I think the business drivers, especially being agile, flexible, resilient, all these should dictate what strategy you should take. That will actually dictate, how successful you are.
Thank you, Balaji. That certainly gives a gist of how important it is to have the migration strategy put in place beforehand, going into and jumping onto cloud adoption. So we have put in the cloud adoption strategy, we have the migration strategy, we went to the cloud, and there's a lot of data there on the cloud. So Arun, you coming from the logistic, for sure, your organization or your sector will have a lot of data, huge volumes of data on cloud. What's your perspective on data management in cloud and the related aspects around that?
So I just follow both Prashanth and Balaji. So as we have strategy for migration, as we have strategy for transformation, we need to have a clear strategy or a practice in place for data management, right? The largest of large mistake what most of us does it. We see the data in the same way what we have seen for decades, okay? So, but the data management in cloud is completely different from the way we do the traditional data management, okay? This can lead us to various venues, okay? See, I come from a logistic industry and we are like 30 years old. We have seen data for last 30 years. Due to pandemic, we want to explore cloud. We started exploring, but and we became a victim of it. Okay, so from I've been a victim, then I learned what to be there in place. The way I've been a victim, I have reimagined my data the same way I have seen for last several years. What it means, my data warehouse was here the same way. My database was here the same way. My storage was there here same way. Re-platform happened there. Whatever Prashanth was mentioning it, or even we have heard from Alliance Group also that we do re-architecting, re-platform. All of these things happen from the application layer, but underlying data layer, we retained as it is. It have burned out everything. Literally, it have burned out everything. Then we realized, okay, it is important to create a strategy or create a kind of an, to be very, a kind of a racematic kind of thing. Okay, this data, we need to use this kind of platform. Even data can reside on multi-clouds. It is not mandatorily that I need to keep this data here. So today I'm a cloud agnostic. I keep my production workload in AWS. I run my analytics in GCP. There is a porting of data happens from here to there. Somebody can ask, when your actual core database is sitting in AWS, why do you run your analytics there? I found I have that capability of running data there with a cost what I can afford of. And we can derive a difference of reports which can serve the business, right? So it is important that what we structure, what data has to be there, how the data has to be there, how we are reviewing the data, the strategy for data management. Even today, as Balaji was mentioning, we have tool sets to do this practice in place, okay, to do the data management. I don't know how many of us has that understanding that there are tool sets, that's the data management practice. All of these things has been now coming to the picture after we burn ourselves into the area of this cost predominantly, then the other aspect of security and other things. So I just summarize that when it comes to data, what we pick, how we use, and what is required is going to define how efficiently you're going to operate your or use your data in the cloud, and thus we're going to benefit our business.
So what we hear is you learned it the hard way, and the two important aspects which you called out is the security and the costing. So yeah, so it's always better to have a data strategy is what we understand, and learn from others how they have learned it hard way. Let's not get into the hard way of learning ourselves and have the strategy on the data part also before we jump into the cloud adoption. So that brings to the next point of topic or discussion. So if Abhilash, if you can throw some lights on the security part, how we can manage the security, some thoughts around that, because as Arun mentioned, security plays a very vital role, right? So
sure. So Arun mentioned about the data warehouse being there previously, even before the cloud, right? So the only thing that clouds adds is the scale and the visibility. So you have your data, you know this much data I have, but the visibility of the data on a single pane or maybe on a single dashboard, or at least 2 dashboards if you are using multi-cloud, that cloud adds, right? At the same time comes the security part. So while we are going at scale in terms of adopting cloud or maybe adopting technology, in whichever form it is, be it IaaS, SaaS, or any of the small web applications, our user are installing knowingly or unknowingly in their endpoints. So security plays a very critical role there. So it's not only about the security of your infrastructure or the top layer what you have. Security should be in every layer of it. So be it your compute, be it your endpoint devices or your edge, right? So there are multiple ways to look at it. Maybe you can create a policy. So while we are going ahead with a strategy for migration or adaptation of cloud, or just one point to Balaji's point. So with infrastructure, application and data migration, skill migration is also very important. Upskilling your current resources what you have. At the same time, making a policy wherein everyone understands how to use the cloud or maybe how to use the access of their data throughout the organization, right? So architectural review. So while we are going ahead and adopting cloud, we are spinning up servers, we are spinning up services. We have created one architecture, that base architecture. We do not revisit that. In 6 months or 8 months, we do not revisit that. Yes, this much of services has been added. How is it integrated to the data center, or how is it integrated to the current VPC what we have? So that is very important in terms of revisiting your architectures. Then IAM management is a very critical part. Most of the times we have seen, because I come from the other side, so we help customers adopt cloud, right? So in many large organizations, even small organizations, what they do, the employee is leaving, or maybe the policy management, the role management to a particular employee. We need to revisit as well as review those policies and procedures what we have created for our workload as well as infrastructure is very important.
Understanding the shared responsibility model is very important from the security point of view, right? Adopting cloud doesn't mean it is secure at all. So across multiple layers, encryption at rest, encryption in transit, TLS is not sufficient. The API gateway is not sufficient. Having a WAF or a firewall is not sufficient actually. It's quite a lot of layered security architecture that we need to really look at. I just want to add that.
Yeah, so if you look at from the CSP perspective, or maybe from the provider perspective, it is shared responsibility. From we as a consumer, it is the whole responsibility of ours. So the infrastructure, underlying infrastructure is being managed, but what about the other securities? Even while you are going ahead and looking at the cloud providers, the responsibility lies with users that which provider should I choose? If I am looking at security or maybe looking at compliance and data availability. So
certainly. So if I'm not wrong, what kind of a service, infrastructure as a service, or what type of service we are taking up, basis that the responsibility sharing on the security varies. That's what I understand. So Sanjib, how about you? What are your thoughts on this front, on the security part?
Yeah, so basically like a couple of things. When we talk about cloud and cloud security, so first thing, as Prashanth also said, it's a shared responsibility basically. So between customer and the service provider. And on top of that, most important thing is that which model customer is choosing basically, which like whether it's a PaaS, means platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service, or SaaS. So based on the responsibility would be divided basically. So if customer is adopting like SaaS model, in that case, the entire thing like would be taken care by service provider basically. The security solution or maybe the infrastructure, everything would be managed by service provider. But the moment customer will like adopt PaaS platform or PaaS service, so in that case like service provider is going to offer only the platform.
Correct.
So service provider will take care of the platform security, not the application level security. So that is the one part customer should look at. And the most important thing is that like for cloud, mostly like customers should think about the edge device and their application security and also the network part. So I think we should not miss that part. Network is very important thing because network security, as Prashanth said, like WAF at the application level firewall or maybe any like system firewall, endpoint firewall kind of thing. So yes, definitely like that is important. Each and every layer we should think about. Like when we talk about the endpoint or edge devices, your users are accessing the applications basically from the data center, public data center or maybe private data center. So then maybe you need to set some gateway. So you need to set some like identifier, maybe like maybe it would be like identity management, or maybe you need to set some policy where intruders cannot like get into your like system or get into your application environment. So those things we need to think, and the most importantly, I would also like agree, the designing is most important. How you are designing your like application or platform or complete infrastructure, that is most important.
So thanks Sanjib. So what I understand is that we are talking about having a visibility of what all is there on the cloud. We have to regularly revisit those architectures and all. We should have a security at all layers. Basically, we are getting into the zero trust kind of a scenario where.
Just to add one more point, like analyze, like proactive analyze is most important. So we don't do any proactive analyze basically. So when we deploy any service, any application to cloud, so the proactive analysis is important, like vulnerability assessment, periodically vulnerability assessment, whether it's a network related or application related or system related. So those things basically we miss. Most of the time I have seen in my career, like customer misses those things. When the attack happened, then they think, okay, so we should do this thing. We should have.
So it's circling back to the same thing, learning the hard way. Yes, Arun.
I just want to add, slightly in terms of vocabulary, I just prefer from the shared responsibility. I always say data is your responsibility.
Yes.
Precisely, yeah.
Data is your responsibility, and you need to make sure the way you need to protect it. So we can create the layers of solution to protect it. But what I'm configuring, what is the policy I'm defining to protect it is what going to decide to what extent we're going to get protected. At the end of the day, security is not the 100% discussion.
That's
no
true.
one can secure anything 100%. Is always ambiguity is going to remain there. As a part of the design, I bring WAF, I bring gateway, I bring TGW, or I bring something else in the world, or outside of the infrastructure. For example, I bring ASM, okay, which will going to monitor on top of all of these things. What it is going to do? It's going to throw some data to you.
Sure.
Okay, how are you going to convert this data into action? There is no system as such. Whether in cloud or on-prem, something is going to decide.
Sure.
Okay. So it is a human who decides what this has to do. Which, if that is the case, in my view, data is your responsibility, and you should make sure that you design things appropriately, and you have person or a system or so-called AI in place, which will take a decision to act on it.
True. So I understand. So what you are alluding to is not just bringing the security solutions and getting the visibility of those alerts, but having a process in place to act on those, right? So, and while selecting a vendor, we have to deep dive into the agreements to understand what responsibility they are taking up and what we have to take care of.
It varies also. Even you can't abstract it at a IaaS, PaaS, SaaS level. even if you look at AWS, Azure, GCP, for PaaS, the shared responsibility that they take is different for each cloud provider.
That's
so
true.
It will be different.
And hence, it's necessary that each contract or vendor onboarding, we do look into those details. So now this brings to the next topic. So Mr. Ravindra, I need your insights on this. We have seen that cloud is inevitable. We have to be there on cloud. There's a huge volume of data on cloud. It's not a single cloud, multi-cloud or a hybrid cloud is what we are looking at. There are so many security aspects that are coming in. All this brings to a huge cost, right? So how do we manage it? So how do we balance the cost from the operations perspective and the security, how much costing we should put into security? Some thoughts from your side.
Yeah, so costing point of view, I think our calculation starts right from preparing the business case. So when we are submitting the business case, at that time, we try to compare on-premise versus cloud. And when we talk about cloud, definitely certain new aspects we will have to cost, particularly security. Because the amount of security spend which we are doing on premise, I think many fold will have to increase our spending on cloud. Because there are so many tools, technologies available, and since we are wide open in a public environment, we will have to do it in much more carefully, and we need those kind of tools and technologies to protect information. Responsibility can be shared, but the ownership always remains with us. Sure. So from that angle, I think ultimately, since we are answerable, we will have to spend that kind of money on security. And cloud is costly, so I think it is proved. So only question is, when we are submitting the business case, what we are writing in the business case. Plain vanilla level on-premise versus cloud, cloud is costly. But if you leverage full potential of cloud for what is the ultimate objective of moving to cloud? If you are using cloud native capabilities, if you are generating new value streams for the businesses, then it might make a sense to move on cloud, right, in a holistic manner. So business case, when we are preparing, we write all those things with the assumptions and everything. But the real challenge is when the actual spending starts. And for that, we need to have a very strong governance mechanism. Your money will evaporate like anything. Your budgets will vanish. So for that, the experience is, you cannot track these kind of expenses on Excel sheet. You will need FinOps kind of a tool and very tighter governance. Because, for certain people, cloud is a buzzword and it is good publicity angle also to that. So just because whole world is moving on cloud, I am also moving on cloud, and certain applications which are not required to be move on cloud, they are also moved on cloud. Because of that, that hype is getting created. So from that angle, we might lose money on that. Right? So entire monitoring piece has to be tightly governed, and it has to be reported to the businesses, those who are actually using that. And that accountability we will have to fix. And it is not, monitoring at a period end. It has to be done in a real time. So most of the time, our experience is, whenever the provisioning is done on cloud, it is always, higher provisioning is done. And thereafter, nobody is looking at that. It is just running like that. That means if I'm using cloud in an on-premise way, you are going to lose money. So there has to be tighter governance, and particularly when you are using IaaS as a flavor. If it is PaaS, DaaS and all that, that is a different story altogether. But still governance is required. The other aspect is, when we are moving on cloud, your on-premise is still running.
That's right.
And that people are not reporting. Okay, the savings are already committed, shown. But on-premise servers are still running. Sometimes you might power them down, but the racks are not freed. Infrastructure is not redeployed. In that case, it is a notional saving.
That's right.
So those many aspects also will have to tightly monitor and report to the businesses, right? The budgeted or committed versus actual kind of thing. So that governance mechanism is very, very important whenever we are talking about cost management.
Understood. So, Kuldeep, yeah.
Okay, so I think there are wonderful topics have been discussed in this. So the cost management, when it has been coming up, ultimately it circles back to this, the first thing, which is, how to design the cloud strategy. I've worked on the consumer goods company where I've actually done the maximum cloud migration, and then I was part of tire company, and currently I'm in pharma. Most of my experience of the cloud has come from the consumer goods company and all. As it's been rightly added, if you go 5 years, 6 years back, the biggest driver and the biggest reason was given by the head of ITs to CFOs that we're going to save the cost. That was the major reason was given. Obviously, that has been changed over that period of time. But if we don't rightly calculate, cloud is not going to be cheaper for sure. But at the same time, if we design it properly, this gives the saving obviously on a longer run. You don't get it on immediately or on the parallel run and all. Especially if somebody is running hybrid setup. This goes saying my submission here is that I think we should always look for experts' advice. If skills are very, very important, cloud is still a buzzword. We've been keep hearing that. There's a lot of skills have been required. There are new technologies. It's very, very important to consult the experts. If it is not within the organization, then outside in that way. Because that time and that whatever money spent actually gives them multi-folded savings in that way. As an example, now I'll start talking to the practical examples in that way. When we start moving from on-prem to the cloud, we most of the time see that the storage has been taking a lot of space in that way. What we as a in my previous company, what we have done is that we actually cleaned up a lot of unwanted files on that, which was taking space on the on-prem. Now on-prem you spent one time, you don't have to pay again for that except some maintenance charges and all for that very particular hardware. But that doesn't work in the cloud. You pay for whatever the space you get. It's very important to design. It goes back to the same design, the migration strategies, that how exactly you clean up. If something has been not required, clean it up. Take it out. Same with the management. Do we really need the management of certain services on what all level? There are a lot of offerings available right now on all these top layers of the cloud, where actually you can take their service, as and when required in that way. That gives you a lot of savings. Applications which you don't need to run 24/7, which has been required only month ends or weekends or quarter ends or maybe specific time. So it's all depending on the design. If we design it properly, it definitely gives an ROI on the longer term, but not on a short term. The same way we talked about security a lot about here. Security again plays a huge role, and it comes with a cost. Nothing comes on that free. But again, the important thing is that how do you design it? How do you take a good blend of the default offerings, your in-house offerings, at the same time, what are the best of the breed market offerings on the security? And this is all to be designed properly. So nothing can be explained in this, this 4 or 5 minutes of discussion. But all I want to tell that cost is something which is one of the biggest driver for sure. And most important is design it properly, take an expert advice in that way. Well, a lot of companies have been come out with huge savings, and many companies have actually overspent also. So it all depends that how do you design it, what is the strategy, and how do we actually take out and make the best use of the cloud.
So just one point, cloud is not more expensive actually. If you do apples to apples, cloud is not expensive. The thing is, we will not do apples to apples. That is not the intent why we are going into the cloud. The moment we say we are going to not do lift and shift, we are intending to re-architect it. If we say, if you have one small application sitting on one single server, you take that on and put on a VM, with the same kind of configuration, cloud will be cheaper, no doubt. Right? But if you want a DR, if you want a BCP, if you had implemented that on a data center, you had taken another data center, it would have actually made it more expensive. In the cloud, it is cheaper. Right? That was the underlying message. Right? So cloud can go out of hands because you tend to implement a lot of things in a lot of different ways. Great architectural aspects are there, so you tend to leverage it, and hence the cost goes. But then overall TCO, if you look at it, you should never take your re-architecture cost into that thing, right? Because if you are happy with your application as is, you wouldn't have re-architected it. You're re-architecting, and there is a strong business case to re-architect it because it's a legacy system, let's say. Take that cost aside, your TCO will be lucrative, right? It is going to be beneficial. That's my point.
I have learned this cost management in a hard way. So I mean, my points, right, takeaway points from that. Since most of us in this room are from technology background, right? Now we started wearing the finance cap suddenly when we start speaking about cloud. Okay, and another request also to people over here. It is very important that we need to have a separate FinOps team when we are large on cloud. The question about what is this FinOps going to do? As I said, governance. Okay, technical guy. See, but the big problem with the technical person is he sees everything from the technology. I no, I cannot reduce this instance. This is required. That is the aspect this guy sees. When it comes to governance, am I doing right sizing? Does my cost is going in right way? Does the instances over there are correctly labeled? Could I able to segregate the cost between the application, between the functions, between the business units? All these things are very important when it comes to cloud cost management. Optimization is that's what we heard from the leaders here, but cost management in cloud itself is a very important aspect, and this is going to be like booming in coming days because now everyone will start moving into cloud. The current dollar conversion is also like adding up 10% already. Now we will say, okay, is it good in cloud or good in on-prem? This comparison people will start saying that no, I'm going back to on-prem. This discussion will soon start, but all these happens because of the very important hygiene factors we don't manage. Like we heard a couple of points that do a right design, but when it comes to cost, have you forethought how long you want this? Does this application is going to run or infrastructure is going to run for 1 month or for 5 years? If it is 5 years, you go your reserve instance, you commit, then you get benefit. Then your cloud is efficient. You don't do that, you just spin over today and then after a month, yeah, this cost is even more higher than my physical server cost. That, and I truly agree to Prashanth's statement. If you are re-platforming or re-architecting, please accept wholeheartedly that I'm changing my technology landscape. I'm adopting to a scalable platform and it incurs cost. And it is a responsibility of both the leaders as well as business to understand and accept that. And this happens with our first point of strategy. What is my business need? Where I'm going to? Does this cost involved is going to give me returns in terms of business, not in terms of apple to apple comparison what we did there. So what I'm just trying to say, while technology part of optimization is important to have a separate operations for financial management in cloud. And there are tool sets for that, there are managed services available for that, or we can have our own in-house team which does all this for us so that we are still good in cloud operations and cost management.
Thank you, Arun, for adding that perspective. So we are really on top of the time. So I think before we go to everyone present in the forum for the question and answers, if we can, every one of us can give at least one pointer from a mantra, what might be the security angle that we have to look at not a long sentence, just one word. So starting from you, Prashanth, from the multi-cloud environment, how to secure a workforce?
Zero trust.
Zero trust, it's a big one covering everything. So he's taken care of all the members. So basically it's a he said it all, right? Security on each layer, trust, nothing by default, and verify before allowing an access. So I'm not sure if anyone else has anything to add on top of zero trust, please. So considering that this panel is in between the awards, so I would like to open up the forum for any question and answers, yes please. Identity management.
And a lot of us take it very lightly. I mean, that's something that we need to take care. I mean, globally, all the cyber attacks nails down to the credential, compromise of a credential, which we recently even seen. Even nuclear reactor is also got hacked, right? It is the country, just because the father gave his son a phone who just downloaded a game. And that's where it started, right? We all have to be careful about it, and that's what I think is big thing, right?
Thanks.
And just one point on the biggest thing that we see as a customers, from the customer side, not a lot of customers are willing to move away from the legacy systems, right? For their own reasons, right? It could be because of the cost and various things, but that becomes a bigger challenge as we move forward, because the vulnerabilities there still continues. And that's something that probably across multiple customers will face eventually. That's what we've seen as well.
Yeah, precisely that connects back to the migration strategy, right? Instead of taking the legacy thing as is, we should, as Prashanth was also saying, we should consider leveraging the benefits of the cloud and try to re-architect and then deploy it on cloud. Precisely.
Absolutely. And thanks a lot. Thanks for all the speakers and good interaction. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other question? If not, probably we are handing it back to Swapnali.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much to all our eminent panel speakers. I would request all of you to please stand up for a group photograph.